More and more treasure is being swiped, and human greed just keeps getting worse over time. The people defending the city are struggling with a lack of gear. Kwan asks if the army will move, but he says they won't, it's too risky. If the army handled police duties, civilians would think the situation was absolutely critical. Their duty is to act only when it's totally necessary. Kwan stays quiet. Thoughtful. Then he says even if the world changes, people will never change. He adds that knowing this is a terrible burden. Later, somewhere else, a guy is getting consumed by something dark. The bandit is using the man as a lab rat to test his poison recipes. We see the item he's using to do this is the abandoned magic pearl. This gear evolves every time you use it, just like in a level-up manhwa. The poison around the guy starts to vanish. With a wicked grin, the unknown person says he won't off him yet, as he still has to test a few other poison combinations. The civilian says he'll hand over all his treasures, begging for his life. Like a total psycho. The guy says experience is the greatest treasure. The last thing heard are screams. Later, the detective rolls up to the crime scene. Duchik remarks that this weapon is super convenient. They both spot something up ahead. Looking at the body, Sue says the killer didn't even touch the valuables, and it's unclear if it was one person or a group. Duchik states that something dangerous has arrived. When the demon king Yul was locked away, something else just took his spot. Looking pleased, the detective says the kid isn't a bad person. Yet, he admits all this is happening because of him. So, later he'll need to have a serious talk with Yel. Duchik asks if he thinks the protagonist will just tell him everything, and C replies that in times like these, of course not. But he'll do something much more effective, which is to grill the people close to him. On the griffin, the boy sneezes, then wonders if he's coming down with some kind of cold. The system shows that the Golden God's satisfaction hasn't even hit 10%. This has Ule a bit worried. Heading to the desert sector, he says there's nothing he can really do. Up ahead, there's a huge sand tornado. The griffin is already exhausted from all the flying. Our boy says they've arrived, so he tells the bird to get some rest. No matter what the citizens are up to, he has already swiped all the valuable treasures. Smiling, Yul tells the creature to eat up and get nice and plump. Surprisingly, our boy is creating his very own golden god. Elsewhere, the three corporals say to leave the mission to them. Kwan tells them not to be so dramatic, since he's only going to make a statement about Yul. Like a bunch of kids, the soldiers yell for him to bring back ice cream. Once the sergeant is out of earshot, the trio celebrates, 'cause now they've got a day off. Another sergeant clocks their vibe, but just says there's no harm in a vacation. The three goofballs start dancing around him, shouting for a beer. Meanwhile, the sergeant thinks he can't leave these idiots alone. A hand emerges from the darkness. 4 strikes land on our hero. Then he collapses to the ground, completely stunned. Jack announces it's done. Now that he's hit all your pressure points, the pain should be gone. Our guy thanks the goblin for helping him out so much. Right now, Jack is one of Ule's 4 sovereigns. He has a ton of questions, but it's best to wait until things calm down a bit. And now he'll use the fact that Sergeant Kwan is in the city to raid houses in the jungle sector. Something's off with Kwan. He quickly orders the soldier to whip the car around. They're in an ambush. The enemies are chugging potions to keep the attack going. Kwan wonders if these guys are nuts for attacking the military. Still, if he fights back, it'll be total chaos because, like it or not, these guys are civilians. The sergeant decides to book it until backup arrives. They peel out at high speed so the mob can't catch them. Staying cool, Kwan realizes the crime rate is way worse than he thought. The stronger humans must go treasure hunting, leaving the non-combatants behind in the city. And just like that, a perfect playground for criminals was born. If some heavy-hitting bandit shows up, the city's toast. Meanwhile, the soldier screams, yelling that something is on their tail, and whatever it is, it's crazy fast. The city's nuts, and our boy is fighting a lizard. It's got a difficulty level of 3, and it's not just one. A whole crew is getting ready to jump our hero, but of course, none of them can even lay a scratch on him. With just a single blow from this level-up Manhwa hero, the monsters just vanish. Yel says thanks to Jack. His body feels way lighter. He tells him not to overdo it, adding that this place is a lot like the demon dimension. Back in the demon realm, the monsters get tougher and his pain gets worse, 'cause Christina's the demon king, making the punishment extra nasty. Yol says he'd love to wrap this up and scram with the treasure. Truth is, his main goal isn't pleasing the Golden God, but to clear the mission the easiest way possible. That means grabbing tons of treasure and scoring the max rewards he can. Our hero admits the chaos erupting in the city is all part of his treasure hunting plan. A poison monster ambushes the soldier and Quan. The two aren't fazed and have already called for backup. Before all this, the sergeant had earned himself a promotion reward. His superior mentioned a mission and tossed some items to his subordinates. Quan kept quiet, just saying he wasn't used to it yet. The item's heroic class, giving the user a temporary shelter. It creates a safe zone with a 3-meter range that lasts for 3 minutes. The sergeant tells the soldier to hold up, because if they rush in, they're gonna get hurt. Before they can make a move, someone leaps onto their moving car. The guy definitely gets their attention. Quan tells him to get the boss, saying he won't talk to flunkies. The man just laughs, saying the surgeon's got a big mouth. Pointing a finger, he says he's the leader and tells them to obey if they don't want to die right here. The whole car is enveloped in poison as things begin to melt. The soldier freaks out, but Quan stays cool thanks to his helmet. He mentally notes the smoke is corrosive and its range is huge. On top of that, if this goes south, their fate will be the same as the people outside. For now, their protective gear is holding up. Quan says the guy can surrender if he accepts his conditions. Fearlessly, the surgeon offers to let the guy be his subordinate, even promising to make him more human. The bandit asks if Quan's lost his mind. Next to him, the soldier is losing it over this attitude. The villain then spots something behind him, but it's too late. The surgeon says it was all a distraction to create an opening for the reinforcements' attack. And just like that, the bandit gets snatched. He grumbles that he played around too much and blames the wind, saying he can't control this poison. He admits he doesn't know who this is, but he's clearly at a disadvantage, trying a counterattack. The guy makes a poison ball and pulls out a slingshot to fire at the individual. The projectile zips toward its target. Just before it can hit Seal, the surgeon yanks him out of the way. The poison bullet slams into the ground. The wind tornado vanishes, and where the projectile landed, the ground starts to melt. The detective tries to charge in, but Quan warns that the enemy is not alone. Seo protests that they can't run, but the surgeon calls it a strategic retreat. The two start arguing at the worst possible moment. While they're bickering, the criminal makes a clean getaway. Multiple explosions rock the city. On the ground, some criminals are complaining about being in the outer district. They curse their luck for running into Heru. Quickly, both of them try to flee as the girl shouts for them to stop, but one guy throws a bottle at her. Hu doesn't seem to notice the danger, but an old woman warns her to stay back. Before it even hits the ground, the girl snags the bottle with an incredibly skillful maneuver, managing to prevent the explosion. The old lady is relieved. Hiju then asks who those people were. The old woman says they're bandits, but she's never seen them so organized, adding some have poison bottles with no antidote. Fortunately, thanks to her quick thinking, the crisis was averted. Subconsciously, the girl recalls something Kang had once told her about humans. Ku puts treasure hunting on hold because something strange is happening in the city. We see someone watching our boy's clone. Apparently, Kang had already seen through the deception. Munching on a cookie, she wonders what Ule is planning, because without him, the city will soon destroy itself from within. Elsewhere, Jack warns that a huge battle is about to begin, defeating monsters. The protagonist says he expected chaos, but not this level of crazy people. The goblin says to just cut them down, but Yol refuses, wanting chaos worthy of a level-up Manhwa, and these newcomers will only speed things up. Jack admits it's damn hard to guess our hero's thoughts. Our boy asserts they'll get it soon. But for now, they're clearing this dungeon. The huge door creaks open for the pair. Inside, a monster remarks, "It's been ages since a human dared to venture this deep. This creature is another demon king, chilling at the abyss's edge." Stepping up, Ule asks if the boss knows Christina. The monster says he doesn't like the protagonist's tone. Before he can finish, our boy charges, but a barrier stops him cold. The boss calls him an idiot for thinking that would even scratch him. Quickly, he despises that attitude and hurls several boulders. Instantly, the protagonist gets blasted back, realizing it's a magic barrier that nullifies all physical damage. This demon king is a mage type. If Quan brought his platoon here, they'd be totally wiped out in seconds. Jack and Yu dodge the boss's attacks. Besides the demon king, there are other dangers to face, like cursed items and plagues. Hefting his massive axe, the protagonist declares he'll win and sign off to alter the dungeon's difficulty. The monster throws up several barriers to defend. With the axe converting physical power to magic, our boy slays it, adding, he'll make dangerous areas safe for citizens. Over at the West Police Station, inside the meeting room, Sue is hashing something out. The topic of conversation is the poison bandit known as Inyuji. Duchik says the best thing is to arrest him, but with their current manpower, it's a no-go. The detective plans a joint operation with the police, the army, and some good citizens. Hai is all in on this idea. Kwan knows the longer this drags on, the worse it gets. If they lose this battle, everyone's a goner. Since the top brass planned this, they must know the risks. This means they're confident they can win this fight inside the city. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, the Demon King is not yet defeated, boasting he's brought suffering to countless people. For a long time, no mortal could even hurt him, but Yol managed to do it so easily. Again, the protagonist asks if the boss knows Christina. He questions if this is related to the convocations. Yol doesn't know if the monster is talking about missions. The creature explains they also get missions, like in a twisted level-up manhwa, usually to destroy them. Perhaps some monsters have different convocations, and our boy wants the boss to spill more. But he says it doesn't matter, because the more he reveals, the closer that book's user comes to finding death. At this moment, Ula realizes this monster knows something important. Laughing, the creature says he won't get to see the destruction this will cause. The protagonist moves to act, but Jack stops him, saying they should bounce. Before vanishing, the boss sneers. "It's good to see your anguished face." Yell shouts for him to wait, but it's too late, as an earthquake begins to rock the ground. A bolt of lightning erupts from the ground, lighting up the entire area. The Demon King's voice echoes, saying he will await the great condemnation of pawn number 8 that will be induced by the protagonist. The goblin asks if he's okay, and he plays it cool. But inside, his mind is racing about the secrets in the book. Jack asks if he wants to go digging for information, but the kid says no. Knowing a Demon King is linked to Christina is enough. For now, his goal is tackling the area's difficulty, which will take at least 3 days. Jack wonders if humans can even survive that long. He's worried for his apprentice and friends. After 3 days, the city is already in total chaos. Countless people are injured from the battle with no medicine. More victims are from human infighting than from monsters. Sayo and Hugh are getting hit with poison smoke. What can they possibly do to escape this situation? Someone was just itching to see them give up all hope. The masked man boasted his dark power, saying their legendary items weren't enough to stop him. He claimed the soldiers weren't even trying in this battle, just looking to make an easy profit instead. All this chaos was due to the absence of a leader. This world needed an emperor to rule humans, and no one could be as strong as this absolute ruler. The girl suddenly declared that the title of strongest actually belonged to Ule, but the masked man scoffed that Ule didn't show because he knew he couldn't win. The villain's even disappointed. He had a secret weapon prepared just for him. Just then, gunshots rang out, but the man used his powers to remain completely unharmed. His barrier not only stops bullets but is also an automatic defense, meaning the antagonist was gaining new skills mid-fight. A real level-up manhwa moment. With that, the masked man decided to counterattack. As the soldier dodged the attack, he realized this guy had to be taken down, and fast. The masked man claimed that unlike Ule, he would help complete missions and even share points and items. All they had to do was follow his orders. With dark intentions brewing, the masked man said they just had to accept. They just had to obey his every command. But the detective started charging his gauntlets, readying an all-out attack, yelling that the serpent should just go raid a dungeon. But the masked villain blocked the wind, claiming he had already adapted to that kind of defense. Yet both the spearman and the police officer looked startled as something started approaching from underground. Suddenly, a horde of slime snakes erupted from the ground, engulfing them in a giant sphere of poison. Luckily, Hiu managed to throw up a barrier just in time, protecting herself and the inspector. The serpent then gloated that Seo and Hiu's abilities were useless against his own. He decided to spare whoever's scream of agony from the poison pleased him most. The serpent then added there was only one type of scream he wanted to hear, and just like that, the snakes completely shattered the barrier. So, Inspector Seo shielded Hiu, using himself as a shield against the venomous bites. The dragon warrior claimed she was a higher level, but the cop wouldn't hear it. It was his duty to protect her as an officer, and the older of the two. The serpent sneered that this scene was displeasing, but he was about to reveal what he truly wanted. A sudden gust of wind blew his poison away, leaving the dragon, the bear, and even the serpent totally confused. Sheathing his sword, he coolly stated that he expected more from his student. Jack was disappointed to see Hiju struggling against such a weak foe, while So and Hugh were surprised to see the goblin swordsman. The serpent recognized him as a pillar guardian from the last mission, which left him confused why he hadn't vanished. Jack wanted to teach the young one a lesson. but they were running seriously short on time. An emergency notice popped up. A rumble was heard near a huge pile of gold, and what looked like an empty pig shell. Another golden deity competing for the top spot has been found after reaching adolescence. With that, the city's mission was altered. Citizens could now choose which golden pig to gift their treasures to, and the deity with the biggest haul would be crowned the winner. All were reading carefully, as another notice stated that those who chose the future winner would be rewarded handsomely, but those who backed the loser would receive nothing. The citizens began blaming the protagonist, seeing the desert deity had more wealth than the cities, despite having only one participant. Even the serpent's goons began to discuss how this was all Ule's doing when something surprised the masked man. The whole city ganging up on one villain was a classic play, straight out of a level-up manhwa. Yet, a simpleton who only relies on his epic item could never fill that role, stated our protagonist. Arriving on his griffin, the civilians started muttering that Ule would never surrender and how he looked like an evil person just by showing up. With that, one of the men proposed they all just head back to the city. Another argued the serpent was there, but no one cared about a small fry villain when facing the servant of the demon lord of greed, who made even the serpent shake. With that, the masked man immediately attacked our hero. He unleashed a colossal, venomous snake on Yol. Both Seo and Hio were shocked to see the giant snake swallowing their friend. The serpent decided to execute the book's wielder for making a fool out of him. Yet Yol seemed unfazed by the situation, unlike his griffin. Suddenly, the magic beast caught the serpent's projectile in its beak. This completely baffled the masked villain, who just witnessed it eating his power. He was surprised to see the Emperor Griffin, which diets on venomous creatures, swallow the special poison bomb he made for its master. Suddenly, Yul appeared right behind the villain. The serpent was startled as Yul asked, "You know why your poison's ineffective?" Yet, Yul refused to explain, telling him to find the answer alone before flicking his head and telling him to stop harassing innocents. Seo and Hiju were left completely and utterly shocked. And just like that, the serpent was defeated. After that, our hero claimed the Golden Desert deity, stating anyone who offered treasure to his pig would be a victim of the demon greed lord on every mission. And with a wicked grin, he challenged the city to find a solution before this mission ended, and then flew off on his griffin. This left everyone floored by his truly pathetic acting skills. Even Jack had to comfort him after that awful performance. Then, as the sun set, a giant tornado was spotted in the desert near the city. At the urgent meeting for the treasure hunt mission, attendees were discussing how to gather enough treasures in a week to defeat the book wielder. Hiu asked the citizens to join forces with them. Su confirmed Ule was the city's greatest enemy, but they had other urgent issues to handle. The inspector proposed they face the problem, just like in their original world. Cooperation was the key. Hiu stated that teamwork always allowed humanity to overcome its greatest challenges. The main goals were to vanquish the book wielder, complete the missions, and return to Earth. And with that, Hu ignited her spear and requested the citizens' help, leaving them all fired up. A blonde person remained behind bars. This person had the orb implanted in his hand and a furious anger brewing in his mind. A new morning dawned on the trapped city. The city union procured the first mission guidelines. Firstly, the lair was the habitat for all hostile monsters that didn't live underground. Lairs were easy to handle since monsters could be spotted from a distance. They didn't offer much loot, but could hold a rare, valuable item. Secondly, there were dungeons. Dungeons were any biome that couldn't be discovered without entering. This place, like in any good level-up manhwa, offered the most valuable loot. But entering a dungeon alone was prohibited. Seeing how dangerous it was, getting help from an experienced fighter was recommended. The army, or the police before entering. An old man organized the treasures before escorting the loot back. With that, multiple loaded trucks headed to the city, when suddenly a horde of flying monsters appeared, and so, the adventurers tried to fight them off until they could reach the city. They were almost home, where other adventurers waited. The humans in the city then began attacking the monsters to protect the trucks. The third location was the Treasure Evaluation Center. The loot's value was estimated within the center's walls, while forces of order protected the adventurers inside. An epic treasure, the idol of the true god, made in the deity's image and valued at 1,000, was discovered. The hunter was overjoyed by his precious discovery. Meanwhile, someone was writing numbers on a board. Uroi was still far wealthier than the city. Even though they had conquered most of the jungle and canyon, only one place remained undiscovered, the desert where the book wielder was hiding. The citizens had avoided dangerous, mysterious areas until now. But now they had the power to explore them. A shiny hair was on the table. Su was just informed this hair was from the Ule replica they were detaining. His partner then said that if Ule had mentioned the desert's deity from the start, people would have avoided it, being scared of him. Yet, the book wielder decided to play the villain, forcing people to take action by overcoming their fear. But the pissed-off inspector slammed the table, snapping it in two and shutting down the idea. At this rate, the mission's outcome was irrelevant. The poor guy was going to be typecast as the villain forever. His partner stood there silently, piecing it all together. He was finally getting how Yol Choy's mind worked. Our hero wasn't just focused on this one mission. He was strategizing for the entire endgame. The guy knew the city needed to unite, constantly evolving like in a real-life level-up manhwa. He likely had a plan to win the treasure hunt, pushing civilians past just looting pricey stuff together. Meanwhile, a giant stone tablet covered in scriptures was unearthed in the jungle. The blonde woman examined it closely. She was already thinking about the sweet prophet as she uncovered a new way to game the treasure hunt. A massive battle was raging in the desert, right next to a swirling tornado. It's the final day of the treasure hunt, and Detective Su is facing our protagonist, Yul, who just blocked his punch while his golden deity had raked in 38,552,895. But our hero was shocked to find himself launched into the air. Seo declared he'd stay heavier than Yul, regardless of his level. Once he was airborne, our hero got jumped from both sides by the Serpent and the Dragon Warrior, whose citizen faction had amassed 37,001,970. But the book wielder slickly dodged every single attack thrown his way. With the race for top deity ending in less than 25 minutes, Yul then taunted them, pointing out how little time the city had left to take him down. He called his opponents the allied forces of the city and said they really needed to try harder against him. Flashback to 4 days ago. Hugh was floored by the Serpent's real identity. The big baddie was just a level 24 teenager named Sungwin Kang. The cocky kid told Hugh to get lost, saying he'd call her if he ever actually needed her, which totally ticked off the hero assigned to watch him. But just as the Serpent was about to make a move, he was interrupted by something zipping right past his face. It was Hiju's spear, way faster than the villain's orb, separating him from your average Joe. The Dragon Warrior got this intel from Sungwin's own crew, who totally sold him out. This made him look like a terrible leader. But the Serpent didn't even blame his backstabbing minions, knowing they'd come crawling back after he taught them a lesson. The high schooler called it basic human nature. This prompted the hero to call him a teenage edgelord. His wishing orb, an epic item, was the only reason he lost to the book wielder, being that the orb wasn't even at full power yet. But once his strength peaked, he claimed even Yul would be no match for him. Hugh grew worried when the Serpent boasted that he would one day rule the entire city. And the villain had a point, since the demonic book's wielder was the sole reason for his defeat. This got the Dragon Warrior thinking the city needed to prep for this kid who hadn't even unlocked his full potential yet. Over at Treasure Evaluation Center 4, a couple of hunters were chatting about one guy's first ever dungeon run. Nearby, a cop was looking to find a hunter for walking around with an unsheathed sword. Zhao was ticked off. She needed chaos to cash in big on her intel. So, she hit up her contact, Miss Jackpot. And Miss Jackpot? None other than Hugh, who was genuinely worried sick about her friend. But while our Dragon Warrior was on the phone, the villain was tweaking his Serpent's wishing orb like he was editing a level-up manhwa. Zhao asked the Spear Maiden if she knew anyone in the market for some premium information. Instead, she just rounded up all the big shots. But before they kicked things off, Helmet Guy had a question. He wanted to know why the kid villain was crashing their meeting. Turns out, the guy right next to him requested his presence, claiming the high schooler was seriously talented. Wasting that talent by making Hiju his warden was insane. But as the inspector started blowing a gasket about it, he instantly changed his tune when the level 1 Cheeman Lee cut him off. According to the blonde's data, a golden deity can be taken out before it hits full maturity. And even with Ule in the way, there was still a chance for them to win, which is why they needed help. Almost like a classic level-up manhwa plot, the city would be begging for him before he pitched a deal to the table. Meanwhile, Ule and Jack were chilling on a roof next to the giant tornado. The swordsman asked if his master needed to snag more victims for the demon Lord of Greed. He saw Ule was still cursed, but the book wielder said he wanted people to grab all the treasure they could, since he'd found a solution for the victims. This time around, our protagonist targeted folks entering a lethal dungeon or finding a cursed item. Straight from a level-up manhwa, Yol claimed he had to isolate a few people for this mission, which piqued the swordsman's interest. And right then, they got company. A team made up of the lieutenant, the inspector, the high schooler, and the Spear Maiden was closing in. plus a truck full of soldiers to help the heroes take them down. Jack wanted to go say hello, but the book wielder stopped him, saying it wasn't his turn. First, you send your weakest servant out to run their mouth. A giant shadow fell over the military trucks as the Emperor Griffin slammed into the city's allied forces. Seu and Hiju were stunned as poison gas swirled around them. The serpent bellowed at them to get out. The kid decided he'd play decoy for their first foe, which really ticked off his two teammates, who dove in to attack from above. Meanwhile, the lieutenant ordered her units to find cover and provide fire support for the heroes. The soldiers snapped to it and executed the order. As for the serpent, he had no interest fighting Ule's minion, staying hidden since the griffin wasn't his goal. He planned to outsmart the ones who tried to play him into killing the golden deity. All while the gray-haired man watched from a distance, he figured the book wielder wasn't interested in the negotiation he'd suggested. With that, he and his guys started to make their move. Turns out, the whole eliminate the golden deity operation was just a smokescreen. The mission could be cleared by slaughtering the giant pig. Problem was, it was hopelessly out of reach. In reality, they planned a desert raid to grab all the loot possible. This meant deploying every unit since they only got one trip, which is why they had to distract the serpent with the job of killing the desert deity, since leaving him in a weakened city was too risky. The car suddenly slammed to a halt. The man was floored by what he saw. He and his crew stumbled on a ruined Earth city right in the desert. His soldiers eyed the place in silence. This made him think they weren't the only city trapped in this game. Still, he never expected his theory proven like this. This city was ruined by its citizens turning on each other, not by some monster from the outside. The place was also loaded with treasure. The bodies started decomposing a year ago. This led the soldier to believe this city had years for this mission, while they had much less time. But then he was stunned when Hat Guy theorized that both cities actually started the challenge at the same time. But the flow of time just moved differently for each city. There was no way to prove it, but if this was true, it meant the game masters could control even time. Suddenly, claws flashed. Sei was face to beak with the Emperor Griffin. The inspector hit the beast with a well-timed combo of punches, dealing major damage when something startled it. Kanju, ready for the kill shot, had managed to sneak onto its back. She apologized to the griffin, saying they had to win. Before using her power to torch the poor beast, Jack was left impressed. Seo and Hiju's main weapons were some of the finest in this level-up manhwa, which gave bonus stat points and massive firepower, explaining why those two were studs from the start. But their attack range was huge, making them a danger to anyone who got too close. That's why Ule forced them to team up, so they could learn to control their powers. But training them was only possible with an experienced squad used to teamwork. The griffin was finally down, which is why the inspector and the dragon warrior were shocked to feel it moving right behind them. It was Ul, carrying the creature and praising them for clearing the first stage. Sayo, done with this charade, stated he wasn't there to butcher some desert pig. Ula was surprised the man claimed he came to rescue him. Seeing that guy working so hard to get him back to the city actually put a smile on the protagonist's face. Ule then dared Sayo to put him under arrest before flying off, leaving him and Hiju alone until something caught her eye. She leaped in front of the inspector, trying to defend him. Hiju had to block a powerful attack. She successfully protected all of her allies. Jack noted his student was the only one who could repel his attack. This made him realize he had to seriously hold back before he accidentally dusted one of them. The lieutenant remembered him as the strongest of the three pillared guardians from the last mission. It took a huge force and countless hours to take down the weakened pillars. This made the man wonder if they could face the goblin swordmaster with such a tiny unit, especially now that the serpent had vanished. Meanwhile, at the Griffin Emperor's nest in the canyon, Yul was hyping up his weakest minion, telling it to rest as it healed. He then apologized to the fast-healing creature for basically using it as a disposable pawn. As an apology, Yul whipped out a legendary orb, a one-time use item for changing the weather in a small area. The book's wielder summoned a thunderstorm to guard the Griffin's nest for the mission's duration. With that, he zipped back at an insane speed, recalling the inspector's kind words along the way. He expected the city's top fighter to confront him, but was surprised by his good intentions. Yul could predict actions, but not what was on their minds. Smoke started rising. Only Seo and Hiu were left standing before the goblin swordmaster. The inspector couldn't figure out a way to beat Jack, who looked completely invulnerable. Pedu begged her master for access, but Jack wouldn't let them pass with just a conversation, but with a fight. The lieutenant, who was shockingly alive, proposed a retreat. They still had some time left, so they should use it to strategize, since the goblin was only counterattacking. Jack stood atop a ruined building. When Ula arrived, the swordmaster said, Jaeongguan thought wisely. Meanwhile, inside a military tent, the three of them were analyzing their foes. A party needs strategy to thrive in this level-up manhwa. Strength alone is not enough. Ule wanted to use the mission to make them more experienced at clearing dungeons. It's also key to make diverse groups cooperate to prevent a single entity from rising to power alone. As for the serpent, our hero decided to just keep an eye on him for the moment. He was just a boy becoming a man. After all, someone noted the sandstorm ahead made Seo look powerless. He planned to take out the desert's golden deity while the others distracted its protector after getting through the sandstorm. Meanwhile, back within the city, the young man was shocked by the result and asked the inspector how he figured it out. The man said, Ule never follows the rules, but uses them to profit as much as possible. This made the inspector wonder what he'd do in their place, which is how he figured out how to increase a treasure's value before offering it. And with that, the city had to gather more wealth than the desert deity, or hope the scout unit took it out first, leaving the man to wonder how Yol chose for the city to win. The gathering of city treasures went on like clockwork. A cop and a soldier worried about the desert sandstorm slowing the trucks and their lack of gear, but the inspector handled their concerns quickly. With that, they decided to quickly carry out their orders. Yet, they were surprised to find themselves calling him boss. Inspector C was asked about his partner. Hiju assumed he must be powerful since his partner left him to lead, which Seo confirmed, but Dusk was more known for being resourceful. If that's what makes him a threat, Seo wouldn't have left him unsupervised if not for this situation. He knew he had no other choice as he downed his meal in one bite. Surprising Hiju. The serpent was going full throttle, but he was still getting absolutely thrashed. He was defeated and launched by the huge sandstorm. This confused the boy, as his wishing orb's level didn't rise, unlike in a level-up manhwa. With his book open, Yul mused on how the serpent was totally blowing the chance he'd offered him. To truly master his wishing orb, the young boy had to battle a stronger enemy every single time. Yul wasn't surprised his poison was useless against elite monsters, as he'd only used it on weak mobs and humans while hiding. Yul decided not to tell him he would have progressed further had he fought alongside the city's heroes. Yet, the protagonist found this immature serpent to be a pretty good pawn for the time being. Someone was moving at a ridiculous speed. It was Jack. Landing on a rooftop just as the building blew up beneath his feet, the soldier gave So the all-clear. The detective then poured all his power into a single punch, and with the swordsman blinded, the soldiers were clear to let the bullets rain down. They had to duck for cover as the missile hit the tornado's eye, resulting in a giant explosion. One soldier started celebrating too early, but the other shut him up, saying it was bad juju. Amid the rubble, Hiju was left standing. Her master casually used her as a shield, declaring the attack wasn't nearly enough to pierce his barrier. The lieutenant realized they'd need more juice. Still, the goblin was impressed and simply decided to let them pass. He declared they had learned to fight in this world. Jack then told his student teamwork was one path to becoming more powerful. The lieutenant was still amazed. It was like these two were living in their own personal level-up manhwa, as the master remarked that he expected more from his disciple. With that, the city's allied forces moved on. Jack also strolled off with a smile, making the man with glasses wonder if the enemy was training or just testing them. It made him shudder at what might have happened if they hadn't been pleased with their performance. He then ordered his forces to stay sharp. The wielder of the book was clearly expecting them. The allied forces debated how to bypass the tornado, but the detective seemed to have an idea and decided to try something. In that moment, he pushed past his limits, all to open a path through the raging tornado. Everyone was amazed by this impressive feat, but all were startled when someone stated those gauntlets don't grant that kind of power. According to Yul, this meant Punbake was finally starting to respect the detective. Hiju was surprised to see him, when suddenly both she and the detective mysteriously vanished. It was Yul's doing, who declared the start of the final act, after using the heroic tool-free warp tickets to teleport someone. This tool can forcibly teleport any citizen, provided they aren't stronger than the user. Hiu and Seo assumed they'd been teleported far from the battle, when suddenly someone approached from behind. It was the serpent. Impressed they had survived the griffin, both of them just stared at the villain in dead silence. But the serpent found something fishy about them. He wondered how these two leveled up so much in one day. Fiju asked if Ule also zapped him here, but he claimed to just wake up there, making him wonder if Yul was the culprit. The serpent assumed he sent them off, afraid they'd slay his giant pig, but the protagonist confirmed that wasn't his plan. Yol claimed that the final clash was always held in a special location. The serpent started mocking him for that idea. Yol dodged his attack, surprised the guy was so knowledgeable, but the young man claimed to have heard it from those he messed with. The more you get into character, the better you perform the role, which is why the boy remembered it so well. Now, Ule was sure the serpent was the perfect antagonist for a level-up manhwa. The soldiers had lost contact and were now low on ammo. Even though they successfully got the high schooler out of the city, they still weren't sure the citizens could gather enough points. This led them to resume the op by finding the dragon warrior first. Since the race ended in 2 days, they only had time to go with the current strategy, not invent new ones. Hiu and Yol clashed, yet the hero still wanted to negotiate. The protagonist then stated his pride would cause his downfall. Like every other villain, Battle said everyone here could one-shot the deity since it had full health but zero defense. And with an evil laugh, he decided to let the first one to hit him pass, and then kill his pig. But while the serpent was getting into character, Su and Hiju were impressed he'd gotten even worse as an actor. The kid clearly got the mission, but one hit wouldn't satisfy his bloodlust. With that, he launched an attack targeting Ule from all directions. With a swing of a sword, the protagonist deflected the poison before tapping the teenager on the forehead. The serpent was beaten again by a second hit to the forehead. With that, Ule asked Su and Hiu about their next move. There was no room for debate. Despite opposing the serpent, the bear and the dragon warrior decided to confront the wielder of the book. The truck was loaded up. A soldier stated that since the cars were full, there was no space for the adventurers. So, he told the old man to return home with the guards and non-combatants. He and the others would carry the rest of the loot on foot. Meeting them midway after the delivery would be a time saver. The soldier looked back one last time. He gazed at the ruined city and paid his respects to its fallen people. Back in the fight, Yol swiftly dodged Hiju's surprise flames, but the boat wielder suddenly disappeared. The anti-hero reminded them that he was much stronger than his monster friend, stating that they should try better than that. Despite not taking them seriously, Yul's air shoes made him unpredictable. Ku was trying to remember the goblins when someone tried getting her attention. This made Guan yell in her ear via earpiece. She apologized, claiming that she was too busy to respond, but the lieutenant told her it's fine since they were able to find them. Suddenly, the communication was cut. The call ended, so Hiu decided to call Guan back before seeing a text on her phone. It came from the guy in the helmet telling her to just listen when he called back. The lieutenant needed to discuss Yul's speech about the golden deity. He claimed those words were clues to beat the mission, which meant they were all victims of the Greed Lord. This totally confused Hiu, but Guan was more interested in a full battlefield report. He jotted it all down. Guan hung up, telling her to stall while he cooked up a strategy, but Kia was already stressed about keeping up, so she just dove headfirst into the battle instead. It was sunset. The serpent had finally woken up, but to his surprise, his allies were all down for the count. He had to laugh at how predictable it all was. And with that, he went to face Yul again. The hero stated the weapon was abandoned by its power-hungry original owner, which made powering it up the trickiest part. Using it recklessly would totally corrupt the kid, but the serpent didn't want to hear it and attacked the anti-hero. The villain was warned, but was more interested in winning. Someone was trying to get a hold of the spear maiden. The lieutenant had finally cooked up a plan. By nightfall, the city's golden deity had raked in almost 16 million in wealth. It was a long night for anyone walking back from the desert, but dawn finally came, and the old man arrived to pick them up. With that, the city had nearly gathered 27 million in treasure from 116,554 participants. It was the final day of the treasure hunt. The desert's golden deity had stacked up 38,552,895, surpassing the city's by 1.5 million. The serpent was mad and eager to level up, like some level-up manhwa hero. Near the mission's end, with just 21 minutes left, Seo got a sudden message, and with that, he told the spear maiden to get in position. It was time for the final play. Yul zipped right out of the rising tornado, but the detective wasn't done yet. It was getting harder for the book wielder to evade him. With the pain flaring up, our hero was losing his grip on his power. Seizing the moment, the serpent went in for the kill, but he was stunned to see the detective bolt from the battlefield, and even more shocked when the soldier gave the signal. The guy was startled when the tall Su landed right in his face. He told the soldier to hang on, since they were about to take off. The confused teen leaped their way, creating a poison claw aimed right at the boat. The soldier tried to see if they'd ditched Yul, but Su told him to just keep his eyes on the road. They were running out of time. Down to the last 15 minutes. Yul's swords tore right through the tornado. He wanted to give chase, but Hiu was busy chugging recovery potions. She stayed behind, to make sure he didn't follow. She reminded Yul how he'd spilled the beans on the Fang's secret power. True. She could use prominence. But there was a catch. Hiu said she just had to stab herself with the Fang at full health to unleash its full power. But Yul tried to warn her the most vital condition was missing, and what that would mean for her. But Hiu was literally ready to off herself. Using that power now was a guaranteed game over. Hiu's spear wasn't just any weapon. It held the power of the Fire King. It let the wielder use its abilities and summon the Sun Prominence Dragon. But only if all conditions were met at dawn or sunset. Yol knew Hiu was aware of the requirement, but she pinned it on the lieutenant's idea. The man claimed it's impossible to predict Eula's strategy. But he wasn't invincible, since his soul type was an open book. With that, Ule basically admitted defeat. He could chase them, but it wasn't necessary since his goals were achieved. 7 minutes remained as they got ready to engage the enemy. C was pushing the boat at an insane speed. Once again, the man was lifting the wind, creating an opening for the others to charge into the storm. But the detective was shocked to see the serpent emerge from behind with a maniacal laugh. His snake nearly flattened the soldiers in its way. The villain was trying to snatch the golden deity of the desert, telling the pig to stop squirming, and just like that, the serpent yanked the golden deity from the eye of the tornado while Wong's squad opened fire. At the same time, their equipment was getting an upgrade. The armor was now tailored and ready for the giant pig. Less than 5 minutes remained, and the lieutenant decided to use a grenade. This further damaged the golden deity of the desert. Meanwhile, his shield with a ridiculous design was rejected by the city's golden deity. As the child crafted something, his creation was finished. Yet he thought it was completely unworthy and ugly. But his mood instantly brightened when it started to glow. Only 1 minute and 35 seconds were left. Yo decided to ask his friend for a favor, predicting the citizens would soon descend into chaos, as is human nature. This revelation absolutely shocked Hiju. The time was almost up. Everyone was giving it their all when something began to happen with the golden deity. 4 seconds remained. Jude admired the people working together as 2 seconds were left. The giant pig looked ready to explode, but was suddenly relieved, finishing the mission. The city's golden deity won the race. As the serpent cackled like a lunatic on the other deity's corpse, he figured he was about to get a major boost, like in some level-up manhwa. But to his surprise, all his points were yoinked by the Greed Lord. Everyone outside the city was being teleported back. Su and Guang congratulated each other, agreeing to grab a drink later. With that, they were zapped back to the city. The citizens' reward points were doubled. Pigu landed in the city, totally confused, wondering where Yol was. As for the high scores, Gui Kang took third with 33,442 points, just behind Gyeongzong's 45,455. And number 1? It was none other than Wong Park. With a whopping 324,432 points, the citizens started tossing the old man in the air out of sheer joy. But the top scorer insisted Hiu and her treasures deserved all the credit. Still, he decided to celebrate his success by inviting everyone to dinner, his treat. This, of course, earned him even more cheers. The sun shined down on the celebrating city. The lieutenant got a notification. His entire party was rewarded with the golden deity equipment, a 12-faced eye, for killing the rival deity, upping their odds for some heroic tier loot. Wong found the deity's gifts generous, though the reward was up to luck. The pig also buffed the city until their next mission. It meant earning 10% more experience points than usual. And with that, the golden deity happily departed the city. They had a day until the next mission, and Yul was quite satisfied with this result. Our hero managed to stop the Greed Lord's punishment, while down to 1/10 of his health. As Jack said, the city saw them as enemies, but Yel denied it. The swordsman quietly snickered as his master declared himself the sea's greatest catastrophe. Yel was happy the citizens overcame this challenge themselves. It would now take an epic disaster to break the city's morale. But when Jack said Yul guided them to victory, he saw his master was lost in his own thoughts. The city had all its required points and was energetic. A new city number 8 would rise after this break between turns. A crowd was gathering. Many citizens tried to offer their services to Wong Park. But the humble top scorer affirmed the true hero was Hiu, whom his company just helped. This left him confused when 2 blushing men said they wanted to work for him for that reason. The citizens saw the Spear Maiden as a flame angel who fought for them, despite being a Greed Lord victim, and the city's most popular warrior. This made the 2 men obsessed with working with the Dragon Warrior. Hedu observed the crowd silently. This made her remember Yul's words, how he wanted her to be a ray of hope in the dark times ahead. Hiu would be a beacon of hope for the city at the right time. Finally, she approached the crowd, denying she was the special someone they meant. Hiu invited them to fight with her by forming a guild. In the Middle Ages, guilds were groups of artisans or merchants. But in a level-up Manhwa, a guild is a team with a shared goal. This made the detective compare them to social clubs. Dick confirmed this, saying there were many types of guilds. Sus asked if a guild option was in the system. The guild option had always been a part of the system, but none were created since no one could pay 100,000 points. This resulted in 3 official guilds and some unregistered ones. The first and most popular guild focuses on missions and protecting the city, is the Delanx Guild, with Hiu as master and Wong Park as deputy. At first, the members wanted to call it the Hiu Guild, but their master was so embarrassed they named it after her favorite flower instead. Since Detective Ko trusted the Flame Angel, he assumed her people wouldn't cause any trouble. The second guild, built on the colonel's leadership and the lieutenant's abilities on the field, was the Armed Forces of City Number 8. Everyone knew these 2 men would expect only the best for their guild. And as for the third guild, the detective was floored when he heard about the Serpent Guild, otherwise known as the Kingdom Guild. Beating the serpent with his wishing orb attracted a horde of greedy criminals to his guild, all eager to rule the city now that its top villain was toast. Sayo said it was a real-life level-up manhwa. They needed power to beat the servant who's hiding to kill the book's wielder. But the police couldn't form their own guild, being too swamped with catching outlaws and protecting the city. If something wasn't done, and fast, the police would become completely useless. Sue glanced out the window, asking Dusk if this was his grand solution. A crowd of men greeted them in one voice. Every single one of them was eager to work under Dusk by becoming police officers. This got the detective wondering what his partner did in the desert. Dick swore he wasn't raising an army to overthrow the cops, so Sue sarcastically thanked him for gathering all his followers in one convenient place. Tension flared again between the fox and the bear. Just as an officer tried to get their attention, he said they'd spotted something odd while listing the Greed Lord's latest victims. Sue decided to take a closer look. Most of the victims were registered criminals back home. This made Dick realize why the serpent was the only villain showing his face, making him state once more how totally outmatched the police force currently was. This made his partner blow a gasket and finally hire his crew. The detective then stormed out, flipping his partner the bird while insisting the new recruits follow police protocol. The serpent wasn't the only troublemaker terrified of Yule. This required a long-term plan, which the fox excelled at. Papers scattered into the air. They were all flyers, asking people to join the armed forces and re-enlist in the military. The colonel was baffled, since no one ever wanted to be part of their guild. Wong figured the word re-enlist scared people. But on the flip side, it meant only serious adventurers applied, even if just a few. It seemed the lieutenant had something to report to his superior. The guild was nearly out of fuel and ammo. Their food was also getting scarce. Despite having electricity, this meant they'd soon have to rely on scavenging and return to a life without technology. But with morale so high, the citizens probably wouldn't complain. The cardinal then slammed something on the table, calling it an asset. These were archives from City Number 4. The citizens of that ruined city left records before being wiped out, and these notebooks were basically summaries of all their adventures. By mixing their knowledge with City Number 8's experience, they could create the ultimate level-up manhwa survival guide. Meanwhile, Yule was lost in thought. The person beside him said he looked pretty happy, which he confirmed. Yule was startled to see Ja next to him. She offered him some chips, saying his little stunt had earned her some points. Jayu then asked him if he was going to start his own guild. He denied it, since all the members would just end up as a meal for the Greed Lord. She leaned in closer, asking him to promise she'd be his first recruit if he ever formed a guild. With that, she stood, leaving the city's top villain intimidated. Her hope was firmly planted. Zhao offered Yule her help. She proposed to be a victim for the Greed Lord before jumping off a tower. Zhao was a strange girl. She left him a bag of chips. Yule saw how the Demon Lord's punishments and the victims were becoming obstacles for his missions. Yule started confronting Christina on this mission while making it easier for the citizens. The Greed Lord received no reward, as Yule got 0 points betting on the losing golden deity. This was a warning to the Demon Lord not to stand between Yule and his goals. And so our hero decided to repeat the strategy until the entity responded. Sure, his Greed Lord title would get an answer. Christina was fully aware Yule could get what he wanted, when something suddenly caught the protagonist's attention. He was now in a vast, white, and completely empty room. In that room was a mysterious person surrounded by flying books who seemed familiar to our anti-hero. Yule charged with his sword, recognizing the man as the Demon Lord of Greed. But surprisingly, he was suddenly in a chair. The entity was now behind him holding a plate of fruit. Yol tried to strike the book's owner again, but he was magically back in the chair, in a new formal outfit, in front of a table. Yol was suddenly in a tea party with the demon lord of greed. In this level-up manhwa, Christina was different. For the first time, Yol felt powerless facing Christina, the demon lord of ultimate greed, who was quietly sipping tea. Yol decided to keep a cool head since the demon lord seemed to have no hostile intent, so he tried to talk with him, but he was left surprised the moment he opened his mouth. Yol realized he couldn't talk, as Christina claimed to have answered his call out of curiosity, offering him a choice: become crucial, or stay interesting. A smug smile cracked on Yol's face upon hearing that Christina actually required something, so the entity advised him not to get a big head, since he could easily replace him, but not the other way around. This made the protagonist assume that the demon lord could hear his thoughts. Yol was now confronted with staying a curio or walking a more promising path by becoming needed. The presented books were identical but would morph to adapt to his choice. Yol wanted to know if this new path would end the victims of the greed lord and the demon lord's punishments. Christina affirmed he was only offering for him to become crucial, and that Yol might not fulfill the new task. The protagonist remained silent. Yol then figured that those needs would put pressure on him, but this is why he piqued Christina's curiosity from the start. The price was worth the opportunity. By accepting this new mission, Yol would be able to alter the destiny of all the captured cities. This left the anti-hero shocked. The city had now reached level 3, jumping 2 levels once its inhabitants used their points. The player selected his reward as his city was partially restored, making Zhao realize he had more options than the dice offered. This being hadn't made a move until now. Yet, the player from city number 4 tanked their whole operation. This meant city number 8's player was either slacking off, or just didn't care about the city. The player decided to summon an NPC, a summon helper, whose gear and look were totally random. Citizens were warned to be careful, cause it would treat anyone who attacked it as a hostile target. Seeing her crazy high stats and level, some guys who liked her looks started to book it. Zhao likened this new ally to a powerful town guard, but since the player made a move, it meant he was active, or maybe he decided to get serious about the game. The player got a notification. After a deep scan, it turned out that Yol was a perfectly designed unit, but since an error was still possible, the player had 3 choices. This made him go for the invasive analysis. If this choice was a threat to Yol's life, the giant hand knew exactly what to do. Finally, Yol was knocked into a deep sleep. The hero wondered if Christina meant other cities when she said units. The demon lord confirmed it as Yol realized he could talk. This was another shocker, since the book's owner could change the whole game. Krika was way more powerful than the other demon lords. Now it was Yol's time to choose. Our guy cared more about why Christina was summoned in the first place, but the entity denied being summoned. Christina declared he wanted to jack everything from the player, down to their last pixel, making the humans see how much the demon hated these beings. Now Yol had to choose. He remembered how other demon lords saw players as gods who summoned them like pawns for a quest. He reached for one of 2 books, a classic level-up manhwa choice. This made Christina crack a smile. As he vanished, he said his chosen one picked the right and obvious path. Yol was stunned to learn he would forget this whole meeting, since it had to be kept secret for now, leaving the guy bummed out and unsatisfied. Christina then said it was vital to keep things as they were for now. As the vision faded, the protagonist started to wake up. He figured he must have just dozed off. Yol sighed, bummed that the demon lord apparently didn't answer his call. Christina had said the book would guide him. The sun started to set on the city as someone was running for their life. Looked like Zhao was in a real hurry. She wondered if she'd finally lost her pursuers when bam, a hand slammed against the wall. Zhao felt creeped out. This person's voice was way too loving. Henry had tracked her friend down just to invite her to her guild. Zhao shot her down, telling the Angel of Flame to stop being so childish. This adventurer was a solo act, so she told the Spear Maiden to ask somebody else. Hiju, with her fiery red hair, then tackled her friend, calling her a little kitten she had to keep, so Hiju kept pestering Zhao. Meanwhile, the armed forces were training. They could use the recovery function, costing 10 points after a half hour if they didn't take damage, but they had to use it for the team's sake, in order to restore their stamina. It didn't just restore the body, it made it perform at its peak, like after a full night's sleep. This one function insanely boosted everyone's work ethic. Recovery let people use all 24 hours working tirelessly. Ula was currently training with Jack. The master swordsman corrected his friend's stance, while the serpent ordered his minions to amuse him with a brawl, since 10 points restored their health. Someone even promised to make the strongest of his subordinates his second in command. This sleep-replacing recovery was key to surviving the next mission. A true level-up Manhwa perk. That said, a new turn arrived. So the player threw the dice once more. The dice landed on 4. City number 8 was now on the cannon tower square. Since this was called a joint mission, Hiju assumed it would require the citizens to work together. Yo's book started acting oddly as the system sought a partner. The system would randomly teleport 1, 2, or 3 cities that land on a similar square. With that, city number 17 appeared. Hiju figured this city, likely populated, had also been summoned to this game. City number 17's people didn't look like Earthlings, but if they were, their inhabitants had seen a lot. A dark night from this mysterious game piece stared at them. City 8 and City 17 were now face to face. The map began to generate, and just like that, the 2 cities were now connected. The map was almost empty, with just a small cannon in the middle. This mission's difficulty is set by the player's total dice rolls. The cannon tower's difficulty was set to 11. Suddenly, something began to rise from under the small cannon. At that moment, the cannon tower that randomly targeted the cities was in place. The mission was complete once the time ran out, or the cannon tower was conquered. Yol counted 11 floors, 1 for each difficulty. The duration was also determined by the dice rolls, turning out to be 1 full week. With that, the cannon tower began to move. The cannons pointed at the cities and opened fire as the mission began. And just like that, cannonballs began raining down on city number 8. Hiju and Sia went to intercept the massive projectiles. The Spear Maiden tried destroying the first one, but the cannonball was nearly indestructible. Hiju failed to incinerate it. The detective advised her to be careful, and if the cannonballs really were indestructible, they'd just have to ensure everyone's safety by redirecting them. The cannonballs caused great destruction upon impact. Hiju was worried about the city, but Su insisted its inhabitants' well-being was more important. Dusk disagreed, since the mission's goal was protecting the city, not its citizens. And with 1/10 of its health gone, Yol realized they'd lose the game if the city got wrecked. A harsh rule for this real-life level-up manhwa. So, the book wielder decided to observe. He wanted to analyze city number 17's power. Its inhabitants began to mumble. It seemed its citizens were happily praying. They were worshipping their player as a god. And with that, the citizens of City 17 asked for their player's protection. Yul couldn't believe his eyes. A spell called Hardened City just threw up a shield protecting city number 17. With that, their city's HP barely took a scratch. The Cardinal recognized that card from the Fallen City's archives. This meant players could either roll the dice or slap down a card to jump into the game. But seeing it for real was just a swift reminder they were all simply pawns in a bigger game. The small cannon on the tower began to move. The ultimate cannon then targeted the protagonist's city, but it had a 1-hour charge time before it could fire. Since the cannon stopped their rampage, City number 8's military decided to push closer to the tower. But some unidentified objects started popping up ahead. Smaller towers began rising from the ground, so they decided to accelerate and evade the trap. With that, the vehicles did their best to swerve and evade the incoming bullets. The lieutenant lost 2 vehicles with 1 man injured, but he was still ready to fight. So, the soldiers told their superior to push on. They'd handle the trap. Wong ordered them to come back alive. He then saw why the map showed just one structure. The map could shapeshift, creating constructs and monsters whenever it needed to. The driver griped that the Angel of Flame should have come, but his superior shot that idea down. Putting Hio on the front line leaves the city defenseless, so she and the detective are staying inside for the mission. The soldiers needed to study the tower and then come up with a plan. Just as he suggested they team up with city number 17, the lieutenant saw the serpent flipping him the bird from a window. Wong then spotted the villain on a speeding red sports car. Talking about making a good first impression, the serpent and his guild charged headfirst directly into the obstacles, so the masked man used his powers to clear a path. He then used his venom to destroy the mini towers. The soldiers watched the maniac tear ahead, cackling like some level-up manhwa villain. Wong hoped his immaturity wouldn't start a fight with the other city. 47 minutes and 30 seconds were left before the ultimate cannon struck city number 8. Cannonballs once again tore into the sky. Each tower cannon had its own cooldown, and the Kingdom Guild was inside when someone ambushed the soldiers from behind. This guy assumed city number 8 was first gen from its design and citizen outfits. The lieutenant was intrigued. The mysterious knight was a level 62 elite citizen, introducing himself as Roll von Lexus. Roll was head of his house, called by the divine, and he asked the lieutenant for an alliance to protect his city. But before allying with this medieval-looking city, Wong felt it necessary to tell Roel he represented a guild, the armed forces of city number 8, not the city itself. The knight then understood city number 8 had yet to unite, just like his own city in the past. So, von Lexus decided to postpone their alliance, but asked the lieutenant to deliver a message to his city. Roll proposed a peace pact. Neither city acts up, and the aggressor's punishment is chosen by the victim. In other words, this meant self-defense could get lethal. Roll clarified this was just to protect his city, offering a mission guide as a goodwill gesture. Robo shot back that the cannon tower was the very first mission his own city had cleared. This meant a city could hit the same square multiple times. With that, he gave his soldiers the silent order. Wong thanked the knight for his kindness, and offered intel on potential assets and troublemakers. Rubble, satisfied with this first encounter, suggested they meet again at the same time tomorrow. The curious lieutenant was intrigued. The knight showed zero interest in scouting the tower, but he assured him forcing the entrance was impossible. Brute force was useless since it required a special ritual. That sealed door was frustrating the serpent, so they needed prep time since city number 8 lacked special protection. Yel was pretty shocked to find out that city number 17 had been in play for 150 years. Jack was intrigued. As Ula was just sitting on the side, the anti-hero was playing hard to get. The book's power flared, and seeing it made Ule smirk. He was tasked with offering a worldly object to spare 100 of the Greed Lord's victims. Yol found the side quest weird and the reward totally lame. Turns out this was a personal request from the Demon Lord. Yol just assumed Christina, who he pictured as some hideous monster, would try to meet him in person. Suddenly, the anti-hero slapped his own face. He knew the task ahead was going to be difficult, yet he was still pumped and answered the call. A classic level up Manhwa scene. He'd meet the Demon Lord eventually with this approach, and if that didn't work, well, he'd just force him to show up. The citizens freaked out, seeing their biggest threat moving inside the city. Everyone was on high alert as the NPCs started acting weird. Yul was targeted by an invasive scan. Time was up, and the ultimate cannon activated. Hiju dove headfirst into the attack to stop the blast, the Angel of Flames clashing with the immense cannonball. Hiu then recalled her master's advice to use her power modestly. At this point, that was out the window. She'd need every ounce of her strength to protect the city. C was completely powerless in this situation. Yul decided to use Taflum, the legendary throne weapon said to have pierced the demon god's eye. The item had 10 shots per mission, but it got more powerful if you used fewer projectiles. Yul only needed one throw for this mission, just enough to pierce the giant cannonball. He used all Taflum's charges in one go. The giant cannonball began to crack before leaving a titanic explosion behind. Seo congratulated Hiju, but the girl insisted it wasn't her doing. The anti-hero had intervened once again. The explosion was so powerful the Spear Maiden realized they could have never countered that attack alone. The ultimate cannon suddenly spun to life, set to blast city number 17 in just 1 hour. After the ultimate cannon fired, the map terraformed. Flat ground erupted into solid walls, giving soldiers some much-needed cover. The lieutenant was finally figuring out this crazy map's gimmick. After checking the intel from their new ally, Wong cooked up a plan. And just like that, he ordered his men to regroup and hop in the rides. Too bad the rising walls had already trashed the engines. The jealous man wished for horses like City 17's forces. Then a red streak blazed across the sky as Yel's sword effortlessly wrecked the defense towers. Yol landed right on the money. According to the book, our hero needed to carve a 16-square-foot chunk of earth from under him. The instructions on how to slice it were ridiculously specific. Yol just had to place the designed piece onto his book. Suddenly, the dirt chunk just vanished. And with that, our protagonist got a dinky little reward. But while he was scratching his head, the carved piece materialized in the Demon Lord's hand. Christina then casually crushed the received gift. He looked pleased. This powerful demon now held a key piece to absolute chaos, like a prize from a level-up manhwa. So, he'd protect his useful servant. For now. Suddenly, the NPC popped up behind Lial to conduct an executive analysis. The anti-hero was puzzled to see it outside the city. Then, the NPC just attacked Yul, who figured it must be glitching out. Our hero got seriously alarmed when it auto-adjusted to his strength, suddenly hitting level 600 like some broken level-up manhwa character. And for the first time in ages, Yol was actually bleeding. The NPC then began its physical checkup, the first part of the invasive analysis. Yol was stunned by the crazy level jump. With that, Yul and the NPC entered the quarantine zone. He frantically fought back, desperately trying to bolt from the quarantine zone. but the NPC snagged his leg right at the exit, stating he was forbidden from joining the mission. Yol was to be detained until the invasive analysis concluded. This whole thing intrigued our protagonist. Yol was suspected of being a system defect or a hacker for gaining so much power at such a low level. Our anti-hero grabbed the flying book and summarized the NPC's spiel, and in a rage, blamed the Demon Lord's book from the system, chucking it at the NPC. Yol now faced a test: pass and be deemed normal. But if he failed, he would be immediately terminated. Getting the silent treatment from the game devs reminded him of the powers that be back in his own world. Everything was set, and with that, the new adventurer guild, the Raiders, rolled on out. Its members were on bicycles to save what little precious fuel was left in the city. This guild wasn't picking a fight. The Raiders' purpose was to explore the new map. Cannonballs kept hammering the city. Its health had already dropped by almost 20%. Sayo pointed out the city was constantly taking damage, but Hiju claimed it was no big deal, which puzzled the detective. The Flame Angel declared it wasn't the same city anymore. The police officer just smiled and agreed. The old man was totally unfazed. According to Dusk, they just had to defend the city's attacked zone, and the Spear Maiden could even use the Rising Wall as her personal fighting stage. One raider was desperately screaming for help while his guildmaster just stared at a wall. Meanwhile, Wong Park was actually leading his crew. Some citizens, seeing how tough the cannonballs were against Hiu, wanted to melt him down to craft gear, while a hooded figure inspected the cannonballs. It looked like they found something juicy. Zhao decided she'd sell her new data to the highest bidder. Still, wildcards like Ule, the Serpent, and Dusk, and many other variables were still causing chaos. But someone was spying on Seo and Hiju's little chat. The spy wore the heroic protective gear called Shadow Fit, which made its wearer invisible in the shadows. City number 17 hadn't even lost 1% of its health. Robo was impressed by City number 8's potential, since they'd only been in-game a month. Level 33, Hank Sith, an elite citizen, worried the knight was spilling too much info. Like a predictable *** level up Manhwa *** hero. While level 47, Emma Hilt thought it'd be for the best if City number 8 powered up. As for the level 50, Bior, he figured they could have just wrecked everything if it wasn't a joint mission. Robble told them to be patient. It would all go according to their player's will. The Swift Citizen card had been played, making City number 17's people faster for a time determined by a 6-sided die roll. Blessed with 3 hours, Rubble ordered his troops to charge. And just like that, the citizens of City number 17 stormed into battle behind him. The knight saw his city as the player's chosen ones. He was convinced the entity totally favored them. This knight wielded the legendary one-handed sword, Stormbreaker, a powerful relic that could summon lightning. He then used chain lightning to just annihilate the defense towers in his way. Without their player's blessing, City number 17 couldn't possibly win this gigantic game, no matter how awesome their equipment was, or how high a player's level could get. Yol tried to break free from the non-player character. The NPC dodged his sword without a scratch. The book wielder assumed it had hit max level like him. But fighting someone this strong was a reality check. Yol realized what a lousy fighter he actually was. He was still a total rookie, but he'd started learning martial arts from the goblin swordsman, just in case. Which is why the book wielder was struggling. This whole situation,